looks like we're live in a new and revised episode of a different podcast with different and new credentials as well. Chris Brown, um, what's going on? It's great to see you. It's been a long time. We've known each other a long time. Um, let's talk about what you're doing, man. Chiropractic world and where you're headed.
Yeah. So what's up, everybody? My name is Chris Brown. I am in Bay Area, California. I am about to wrap up my third year at Life West Chiropractic College. I played baseball growing up, which is how Colin and I met. We actually played against each other in like middle school. Oregon team coming down to Northern California doing like big tournaments and stuff, and then Colin needed some more college exposure, so he needed a team to play for and a place to sleep, and so he slept in this room for like 3 months. And now it seems like we're kind of both going to be addressing people in the same boat. We're both ending up in the mental health realm of humanity and society as a whole, and both kind of catering our work and our practice and what we intend to provide to the athletic community. Now, my end, there's a couple kind of different perspective takes that I've started to develop recently. So I initially wanted to use chiropractic to address like the mental well-being of athletes in general in their sport, because about a year ago, I was kind of thinking like, okay, regardless if something mental or physical is going on, it affects someone's mentals, that causes them to snowball. That was my initial kind of like spiel, how I'm going to, who I'm going to cater to. And I realized that the work that I want to do, I want to address the mental realm of individual people. And through all my studies, learning about how the body works and everything, there is a significant connection how that occurs in the brain through the nervous system. Now, before I kind of dive into any of that stuff, I want to kind of go in on the actual concept of mental health itself, because I think this part's important. So what do you think? Asking you, Colin. So like, what do you think of like mental health? What are the first immediate things that pop up in your mind?
When I think of mental health right now, vastly misunderstood as a unit, as a whole category of discussion. And to be honest, like I don't think there's as much focus on what mental health is, how it can affect you, not just mentally, but physically, and like how the mental how your mental health comes out in physical disorder or illness or what have you, some sort of disorder for the body. I don't think there's as many people talking about those types of connections. And in the athlete world, we see this a lot we're only focused on performance. We're only focused on performance, or worse yet, there's no services mental health wise for athletes at all, whether it be at the professional level of athletics, at the college level of athletics, high school, and even kids growing up, like doing competitive athletics, no matter the level. There's really a lack of services across the board. So those are, I mean, just off the top of my head, some of the things that come to mind. And I think we're getting there. I think there's momentum building in mental health, but I think, like I said, the connections to the physical body, which is why I'm so excited to talk to you as well, because you work with the body and what that looks like. So, I mean, what are some things that you've kind of noticed that any patterns or anything that you've kind of seen in your work so far?
So, before I dive into that, for me, there's a disconnect between what people think of when they hear the two words mental health. instead of actually thinking about a healthy mind, they think of an ill mind. They think of all the illnesses that are associated with someone's mind state. They attribute that, oh, if someone's talking about mental health, then life is beating them. Life is winning the battle. They can't handle it. They start thinking about like, oh, maybe anxiety, depression, PTSD, bipolar, any kind of actual like mental disorder. That's what people first think of when they hear the two words mental health, or they think of lack of illness. They either think of the illness or they think of, oh, this person has a lack of that illness, right? And so for me, I kind of want to shift that paradigm towards mental wellness, right? Because typically when people hear the two words mental health, they immediately start thinking of the negatives. They start thinking of the actual cellars, that the depths, just the caverns that people's minds can take them, and they start thinking about that. Whereas for me, I'm more so thinking about, okay, what is the ceiling that one's mind can achieve? And to me, there is no ceiling, there is no limit, right? And so a lot of it has to do with people's just reality and awareness of what their mind is capable of. Like imagine a question that I've thought of recently is, imagine if your mind generates energy for you, right? Imagine if your mind is actually your friend. You know, like people think that everything that occurs in here is conscious, is in their control, but it's not. Like, you have your reality, right? And what creates your reality? Your thoughts. What creates your thoughts? Your subconscious, right? We generate like anywhere from 50,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Okay. 80% of those thoughts, upwards to 80% of those thoughts, are negative, which is nuts. And thoughts have this incredible power to affect the actual physiology of your system, where it's dictating what kinds of like neurologic signals being sent through, hormones, function of different organ systems. It actually even changes connections in your brain, just how you think. And so for me, I actually want to address the subconscious of people, because the subconscious feeds into the conscious, and to actually create a mindfulness, in which case people can sift and separate the two. Because if you can control your subconscious, then you have gained control of your thoughts, the quality of thoughts, the awareness of your thoughts, and thus you now change your reality. And so there's aspects that people can do day in, day out that feed into generating a positive and healthy subconscious. Yeah, it's the quality of food that you eat creates for a healthier subconscious. The types of exercise you do, your quality of your sleep, your mindset, and your function. All of those play a role in the actual status, health, nurturing of your mind. Now, every individual on this planet has the capability of doing 4 of those things themselves. Their diet, their exercise, sleep, mindset, that's all in your control. What's not in your control is assessing how you're functioning, right? And all that stuff, in order for those 4 things to get integrated appropriately, your nervous system has to be functioning optimally, right? So how are you going to know that your nervous system is functioning optimally? Has your PCP checked your nervous system ever?
No, I mean, that's they're not going to check it.
Yeah, they just say, oh, you're breathing good, your heart's beating well, solid. I don't know what's going on here. Maybe take an antibiotic here. You're a little sick or something, right? Or if you go into, say, someone presents to you as a counselor saying they got anxiety, right? You're probably going to have a conversation of what brings up this anxiety, And so for me, I had the thought of, okay, I think that there's something actually tangible that can be causing this. Mm-hmm. And so that's an area of your brain. It's deep internal, but there is a single highway access point to that region from your brain stem. Your brain stem's the level of your upper neck, right? And there's bones protecting that area. So if there's pressure on your brain stem, then it's going to change the information going up, which means you're either going to have hyperactivity or hypoactivity, more activity, less activity in different areas of your brain, thus affecting function of your body, right? And so as as chiropractors, people often associate that word with, oh, like, I'm just going to rack and crack your back. This is how it goes, kind of deal, right? That's the common misconception. We are doctors of the nervous system, right? Our access point to that is at the spine, because that's where the spinal cord, that's the direct connection to the brain. What I plan on doing is I'm actually going to focus solely on the top two bones of the neck, because that is the direct area of potential pressure and stress on the brain. So it's more so brain focused, brainstem focused, global focused, honing in that one region can actually clear the entire system. And so for people who are doing all these efforts to eat well, to exercise well, to have quality sleep, and to do all the things that they want to, that keeps their mind at ease and clarity, in order for those four things to be integrated optimally, you need to have proper function. Right, so that's where we come into play. So that's the awareness that I want to be able to bring, is for the first thought that people have when it comes to the well-being of their mind is, oh, I need to go get my nervous system checked. I need to go get my nervous system. I need to see how that's functioning. Because if it's not functioning as well as it can be, if I'm only operating with a light bulb at 60% brightness instead of at 100% brightness, then all this extra stuff I'm doing is I'm not going to get that return. Right? I'm not going to get that return on investment of all this time that I'm putting in, And so that's my kind of mission. What I'm going for is I want that to be people's first thoughts when they say, okay, my mind's not right. I need to go get my nervous system checked. Something's off. Let's go. I'm doing all these right things. So I'm still not working. Let's go see what's up. Right.
Yeah. So taking the holistic approach, I mean, you covered a lot in that section, but what does the assessment process look like? Like somebody comes to me as a counseling intern, and I say, they come to me, maybe they have anxiety or depression. There's a systematic way that we can assess that. How would you say somebody can come in and assess their nervous system if they don't feel like things are going right?
Right. So we use an objective measure to determine if there is like an interference in the function of your nervous system, right? It's called a titron. And basically, just like how an EKG measures the function of your heart, it measures the function of your nervous system through it does it through infrared thermography. Basically, it gives us a picture of your nervous system, like a snapshot in time, and it shows us if there is an interference or imbalance present in your system. And so through all the school that we've learned and outside sources too, we know that the heat that we are tracking is through blood flow, and the quantity of blood flow present at that area of the neck is dictated by a part of your nervous system that we cannot control. We cannot consciously control, right? It's called your autonomic nervous system. So we're measuring the quality of the function of your autonomic nervous system at a given point in time. Now, say there is some kind of interference present it's called a scan, but say it's present on the scan, and say that it's not changing, then it's not changing, then there is an interference in the system, in which case we are not adapting to our internal and external environment. Right?
Okay. So you're working potentially out of like a survival mode then all the time, or what we would call like kind of the fight or flight response. You're working at an elevated position.
Yeah. So you want to talk about someone who has anxiety? They're constantly like running 100 miles a minute, right? They can't slow anything down. That's exactly that fight or flight thing that you just talked about, right? So they're not able to go to the other side of that aspect of the nervous system, which is called parasympathetic. So what you just described is sympathetic, right? It's have the calm one that's called parasympathetic. We should be able to change depending on what our environment is dictating to us.
Mm-hmm.
So if like you and me, we're just sitting down having this cool, calm, collected conversation, and you just randomly get some kind of like anxiety attack, like what on earth is causing you to have this sympathetic response when you're in a parasympathetic or should be parasympathetic environment? It's incorrect functioning of your nervous system.
Okay, so that's you're saying then through that scan, you can assess whether or not that is working at a level that would allow you to fluctuate in nervous system function given to your environment. So as, like from the mental health perspective, we talk about you're talking about like coping skills and allowing your coping skills to basically bring your mind and your body back in touch with your reality, with your environment. And that's something that we work on a lot with people is I'm dysregulated in like my environment that shouldn't be dysregulating me. And why is that? And so, for me, coming from my perspective, like I'm big on awareness. Like I'm big on awareness being the change. And so, and kind of it's exactly what we're doing right now. Awareness is the change. Like the more a client can be aware of what's going on, whether it be in their triggers or whether it be just understanding that their environment, maybe that it is safe, that they can feel safe in an environment that maybe they haven't before, maybe it's trauma related, what have you. The more we can bring awareness to that, the better off we can in controlling, because then to connect with your subconscious and conscious, you're bringing the subconscious thought out into the conscious brain, and then you're working towards a solution in that realm. So we're talking about doing the similar things, but you're talking about working with the neck and the spine and adjusting the nervous system so that it can function properly, which, let's just be honest, if clients are coming to me after they've seen you, there's one less piece of the puzzle that we have to worry about. We know that they can then function in such a way that when we bring the awareness to the conscious thought, that they'll be receptive to that. Their body will be receptive to that. And then I feel like for clients to see change, sometimes it's really short period of time. Sometimes it's longer and extended. It has a lot to do with the individual characteristics of the client. But there is greater potential, at least in my mind, is if they're operating functionally from your perspective, then they can come into a mental health setting and be all that much more prepared to change because the foundation is working in a proper way. And they're not working against themselves via their biological makeup.
Yeah. So when you're saying like a state of like dysregulation where something's going on, so there are three things that can lead to a chronic long-term state of like being stuck in this dysregulated pattern, right? It's your thoughts, any kind of toxins that enter your body, and then also trauma. Those three things, when built and stacked up over time, so our body is in a constant state of adapting and trying to adapt to where it can heal from something. We are a healing organism. Like when you scrape up your knee, what happens? You build scab, new skin gets laid down, no more scab, knee looks good, you're healthy again. We fix our body, heals fractured bones. We're constantly in a state of healing. And when the stressor, whether it's a series of thoughts or too much toxin or some kind of trauma, if there's a buildup and accumulation of those things, could be just the soup of all of them, right? And it reaches a point where our body can no longer adapt and can no longer continually put it in a position to address those things. When it reaches that threshold, then our body's response is to just kind of stay stuck in that point. And that presents to us as a stress. It starts in the upper neck, in which there actually will be improper movement biomechanically when moving your head around.
Mm-hmm.
So that neurologic information from the incorrect movement feeds into the brainstem, and then like from there, it's literally dictating all of your autonomic function and all the output. And so there's a one relay thing where neurologic information coming from the tendons, ligaments, muscles, even in the joints itself of the upper two bone and the head, it hits two things, and then it's directly providing information to the area of your brain that dictate your mood, that control like your amygdala, with controls like fear response, triggers. It also feeds directly into an area in the center of your brain called the cingulate gyrus, which controls that's the area that will end up leading to anxiety, depression, bipolar, PTSD. So this area, if there's abnormal, unbalanced information going in, is going to create garbage out, and that garbage out will present as the mental health problems that society is seeing today, which is nuts.
It is nuts. It is nuts. And that's why, when you asked me like what comes to mind earlier, like as far as mental health, like the demand is crazy, right? We've seen over time like trends in mental health just declining significantly over the last 100 years, where some tests that came out, some assessments that came out in like the 1920s, that psychotic was X score, considered in the 1920s. That score is not really relevant today. Most people score neurotic. It was a neurotic score, like that's an average score today, right? So you see that. But it's interesting that you talk about, like, my thought process was like the gatekeeper. It's like the brainstem is the gatekeeper to the rest of your body. And I'm sure you see not just neck dysfunction or limitation, but other dysfunction and limitation as well. And like, just for thought, like the gut biome, when you were talking about like health and or overall wellness and diet and things like that, another factor in that is like the gut biome. What does that look like? How well are you taking care of that? Obviously, I'm not a nutritionist, but I know that the stomach biome itself can dictate mood, can dictate disorder, whether any type of like stomach disorder or digestion disorder. But it has so much to do with mood and like the ability to regulate. And there's so few people talking about the function of the stomach, in addition to like you're talking about dysfunction here, mood dysfunction, and limitations like setting forth.
So all right, so a couple things that are sick. So do you know where like 90% of what serotonin is, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So where does like 90% of your serotonin come from?
Your stomach.
Which is
it is nuts, right? But it's a big time mood regulator.
Yeah. Oh, and that's literally the happiness molecule.
Literally.
Straight up, And then so next step, we know what dopamine is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's like reward, the feel good kind of molecule, right? And so
quick hitter.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the addictive thing. And dopamine will get converted into a molecule called, I think it's tryptophan, or actually, I'm gonna look this up. I don't want to mess this up. Okay, so it gets converted into tyrosine. Tyrosine inhibits the production of serotonin. So when you're doing things that are that instant reward, instant gratification, where it's scrolling through Instagram, playing games on phone, watching TV, you're releasing all this dopamine, and that's a one-step process towards preventing serotonin from coursing through your veins.
AKA less happiness overall. This is what this means for the people. The higher the dopamine, the lower the serotonin. Now you have a problem, right? Now you're not happy, but now you're chasing that addictive style, which is something that I wanted to bring up as well. The addiction to feeling bad, or the addiction to
the victim mentality.
In a way, but the addiction to dysregulation, and I'm not just talking psychologically, I mean like physically as well. Like the dysfunction of the body, whether that be physical, whether it be mental, all gets back to the mind, like we've been talking about, right? There's a interwoven connection of the mind and the body. And there's so much comfort in dysfunction, and it can be comfort. This is what I call it comfort. But what I mean is it's uncomfortable to change. So it's uncomfortable to get out of the dysregulation if you're addicted to the dopamine, if you're addicted to whatever it is. Like Joe Dispenza is great on this, by the way, like talking about the addiction to, just for lack of a better term, feeling like shit, and what that can present as. Like he talks about it from a meditative point of view, like getting in line, like lining up. He talks about it in chakras, but for me, it's just like, how can our energy, like you were talking about, the gatekeeper in the back of our neck to get to the brainstem, is the energy in the body aligning in such a way that you can receive a proper message and send a proper message to the brain and have it work in a systematic form? Or is the dysregulation addictive enough and comfortable enough for us to just stay there? Because getting out of dysregulation is hard, and that's why I say it's comfortable. That's why you have people in mental health who come in and say, I don't want to change, and they walk out the door. And they can't. I mean, realistically, the desire to change is kind of step one. They may not want to all the time, but they have an underlying desire to change.
Yeah, I've never heard of they're comfortable being dysregulated. That's a cool one. That's a good awareness one. Yeah, so like it is that first step that they do want to change, you know? And like that's the first step. And I think that's, for me, that's why I want to work with someone who has played athletics before. So like I used to want to cater my care towards people who are currently in sport. Mm-hmm. Now I realize that with the type of chiropractic that I've been providing. So chiropractic is an umbrella term.
Yep.
A bunch of different ways to go about it. I'm just picking one way. The way that typically is presented to the public is just one way. Unfortunately, that's what they all think that everyone is doing. There's like 20 different approaches. So I'm just picking one way. And where was I going with this? We're talking about people want to change. Oh, athletes. Okay, so the care that I'm being providing is more so towards like chronic health issues that have not helped or have not changed with traditional care, medicine, just the traditional approach, right? So they're looking for something else. So I realized that I'm not attached towards someone currently playing sport. I'm attached to that personality, because I know that athlete personality is that go-getter, the person who wants to work on a team, who wants to constantly improve, and is always looking for that little extra detail that's going to take them one step closer to being the best version of themselves, mm-hmm. right? So what I'm going for is, okay, so more often than not, dysfunction up here is going to be due to some kind of head trauma, especially in the realm of sports, right?
Sure.
B, that the quality of their thoughts, the quality of what kind of chemicals go through their system is bringing them up to that threshold point that I was talking about earlier. But it's typically something physical that's going to take more of the edge, you know? So you think about all the head trauma that soccer players have, football players, man, you can talk about CTE. That could be an entire different segment.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and us getting dosed in the head by a ball when we're hitting, you know, or maybe when we're pitching, we get hit by a comebacker, right? And those the consequences of that injury won't manifest until we're like 40 or 50, right? And so that's actually the population I'm going to be catering to. Is I want that ex-athlete that has something happen to them as a kid, as an adolescent, and now they're experiencing issues that they have no idea what the cause of that is.
Sure.
You know, it's starting to affect their daily routine. It's starting to affect, they can't even be present with talking to someone that they care about. They can't even be present with themselves. Mm-hmm. And really the quality of their life. That's where I come into play.
I mean, I love it too, and it's funny that you say that because that's, I mean, when I began this journey and studying mental health and doing all the things, the goal for me is to work with ex-athletes as well, but in the retirement stages, in trying to understand who they are, what that looks like, life away from sport. And injury is a part of that. Like, injury, whether it be injury forced you out, injury is so forced retirement, you had to choose to retire based on, you know, maybe a long-term recovery process that you just don't want to do. Like maybe your heart's another way. But injury is so closely aligned with sport. It happens all the time to all of us at some point, whether it be small or large. And so looking at it from that perspective, like bringing in mental health into athlete recovery, but also the body breaking down from the years of athletic just wear and tear and what that does psychologically to lose the function that we are so accustomed to as athletes, being the high level individual, being able to do things with your body that the majority of the population cannot do. Like, what does that do psychologically, and how are you able to cope with that? And then what you're talking about, like what we call the window of tolerance. So you got your window, like once you reach the threshold of your window of tolerance, you become above that. That's when the dysregulation happens. Like, is what part can we kind of chip away at to bring either raise your ceiling, but in raising your ceiling, we also want to try to bring your threshold down so you're not above that. You can stay regulated and be consistently in a spot where your mood and your ability to function in your life is not being inhibited by the overwhelming stress being caused at whatever mental health disorder that, you know, may be at play.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool, because like how I was saying, where you can do all those things for yourself, but if you're not functioning well, then they're not going to get integrated optimally. And so, like for me, it's going to be like, okay, like I checked you last week. You were in a state of dysregulation or a state of neurologic interference, however you want to pitch it. You received an adjustment. This week you come in and you're clear, right? We can see objectively that you are in this clear, adaptable, optimal place physiologically. And we like, in our heads, we know of all the different circuits and how that can present symptomatically, and all that this area has going on. But the person still needs to do all of the things on their own to continue to promote them from that either the state of okay, they think they're healthy and they want to get to being like super well. They're the state of, okay, I'm sick. I need to get to a place of just like healing, right? So they still have to do all of these little things to take advantage of being in this clear state.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the question that I have, because I have stuff that I do, but what are things, little practices, tricks that you do to make your mind be and your thoughts be as positive, clear, balanced on a day in, day out basis? Like, what are little things, habits that you have picked up?
For me, what I've really gotten into last couple of years is meditation. Like I can't it's not for everybody. Like not everybody enjoys it. Some meditation can be really difficult. But there's a lot of free and clear for me in meditation. And I think like I feel like meditation has become kind of a buzzword, but what I really mean in like the meditation is finding a sense of self, a sense of comfort, and a sense of calm in such a chaotic world all the time. And I feel like the meditation can provide that. And when I do it daily, I feel so much better and I feel so different than when I'm inconsistently doing it or I'm not doing it at all. And so for me, meditation is kind of that safe place of whether or not like I'm working on something challenging or I'm just trying to be quiet in amidst the chaos. Like that space for me is something that I cherish and then I appreciate and then I practice. Um, but there are little things too, like I'm still playing, and so for me, like I get to use some of the stuff that I get to teach people or work with people on or whatever. And so like for me, it might just look, like, hey, I need to get away. Like for me, nature, like when I'm playing and maybe it's going really bad, you have those stretches where it's just like, hey man, I couldn't hit water if I fell out of a boat. Like it is what it is. Go finding taking the time to be in nature to reconnect, and a lot of it just reconnecting with myself, with uh, something higher than myself. But there are little tricks, using focal points as a check-in for like where I'm at in my environment. We talked about like environmental regulation, like where am I and how can I be checked into reality quickly. Resistance with myself. That's one, like pushing against a chair, like just checking the mind to be involved in the present moment and being present. So resistance, meditation, nature for me, like focal points. If it's during a game, I don't have I can't take a pause and go meditate. Like I got to find a way to find myself there. So um, there's tons of little tricks that I find useful for me. Um, but those are like the big ones. Those are the ones that I would say I do consistently. How about for you?
Oh, that's great. So that was one of my New Year's resolutions, was to tap into meditation. I wanted to see what that would do for me. So that's something that we share. Also the nature aspect too. So for me, I have really refined and revamped my morning routine,
Nice.
where it generates it generates energy for my day to be able to go about all the business I need to do. And so the way I think about it is I think about it in terms of ingredients and not duration I need to do things. So like
Okay.
ingredients for me include like first thing I do when I wake up is I like go brush my teeth. I just get some minty freshness going in. Then I make my breakfast and I go drive 50 minutes to school. But the main ingredients is I need to get my smoothie in. That's got like a nice little healthy protein in it. Makes me feel good. And then I gotta get some kind of movement in, whether it's doing a legit functional. I do a lot of functional workouts. I try to think all the movement that I do now in the gym. I try to either think of how that's going to apply in real life or how it's going to apply in terms of my adjusting. Because essentially, I'm still a student athlete, which is the cool part. I have to move quick and explosive with my hands and body too, in order to move a bone. So it goes to that, and then after I work out, I hop in the sauna. When I hop in the sauna, I'll read. So I typically, morning book is typically some kind of mindfulness book. Currently, I'm reading Crucial Conversations. And that book, the one thing I've gotten out of that book is that, yeah, it's talking about high pressure stress situations where you're interacting with someone else, but reality, it's also addressing a lot of conversations you have with yourself. So that's been a really cool read. Reading, and then I'll meditate in the sauna. And typically when I had been doing guided meditations because I didn't really know what to do, and I was doing that inconsistently, like what you're just talking about, in winter and spring. And I was even a little bit inconsistent in the first part of summer, and I realized that on days where I didn't meditate, I would actually like get in my own way somehow. And so I made a commitment. It was like, hey, I need to read and meditate every single morning before I even look at an email, before I even need to make a phone call, whatever it is. I gotta make sure I get those two things in first, right? And so when I meditate, I let whatever kind of comes to me, whatever the focal point of that meditation is going to be, come to me. So sometimes it is practicing like stillness. Sometimes it's like a body scan through breath work. Probably the best ones are when I actually visualize my behavior and interactions, and actually think about the energy that I'm going to bring into the room. Like, what is that energy going to be today? And what I remember one example is like, hey, I'm going to be like a cool, calm, jazzy bounce. That's what I'm bringing to the table today, Or it's like, all right, dude, I'm like, hey, I'm firing all cylinders, and people are going to know that, like, I'm getting after it, but I'm getting after it in, like, a very, like, bouncy, kind of just jamming away kind of way. Nice. Other times it's letting a thought come through, and then actually diving into the depths of, okay, what is the purpose of this thought? What's going on with this? Let's actually break down, decipher this, and become aware of the web, of the subconscious web that is generating this one thought. And so it's random. And then after I'm sitting in that sauna for however long, like I don't have any ties to a duration of certain activities. So then I go in the shower. I use hot water, but I always finish with 30 seconds to a minute of cold water.
So Wim Hof.
That like snaps me back into like reality. Like, okay, let's go. I'm ready to rock. And then in terms of like how you're talking about the nature thing, a question that I ask others, especially when they're feeling like all they're doing is just school stuff, or when all they're doing is their business thing, is what does your 7-year-old self like to do? What are three things that 7-year-old Colin wants to do? And
dude,
so
yeah, it's a good question.
For me, it got broken down into views, watching things fly, and Star Wars. But anyways, so views. What can stem from that? I can get my hiking in. I can get my mountain biking in. I'm super into like landscape photography. So that's like playtime for me as an adult, is just take my camera around and just snapping pics of scenes. Like you can see behind me, this is national parks that I've photographed. And then watching things fly. So that comes into like baseball, watching the ball fly. So that's throwing, that's hitting, that's playing my adult league softball. For a few quarters, I was running the Life West team, playing golf. Even like watching birds when I hike and stuff. I'm like, dang, how the heck did they do that? And so that to me, that's my weekly, like, those are things that I try to hit on weekly that keeps my fun tank, energy tank feeding into my business tank. The stuff like morning routine, the morning ingredients, that keeps the business tank, that energy tank filled up. But my fun tank, that feeds into it. And so when my fun tank gets depleted, then the energy tank starts to deplete too. And that's when you reach that burnout, that empty feeling, you're running on E, and now you're cashed.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good question, and I like how you put, like, the fun tank and the energy tank because, like, there's varying depends on your theoretical orientation as far as, like, mental health is concerned, but, like, there's varying needs, and in reality therapy, there's one of the needs is fun, and what does fun look like? And, like, I mean, just to be honest with you, I feel like if you were to survey, this is total speculation, but if you were to survey the adult population in the United States right now, their fun on a scale from 1 to 10 would be like 1 to 3, right? And like if you're working in reality therapy, you got 5 needs and those needs all need to be met for you to feel like you're functioning at a proper level. So I'm glad that you said that because fun as adults looks so much different as fun as kids, but integrating the child that is within all of us to some degree into your adult life and what that looks like is super interesting. And I mean, I'll leave this up to you. I know this is only part one of like what will probably be multiple parts here with us. Um, and we're running at about 45 minutes. So, I mean, is there anything that you want to leave people with? Because I think, like, for me, like integrating your inner child, is a great conversation to have with yourself, and um, being aware of just what, like, about. I'm back to awareness. I usually come back to it, but being aware of like what actually fulfills you. Um, from a mental health standpoint is a big deal.
Yeah, yeah, and so like that's gonna be like that's definitely a question I'm gonna be incorporating into like my screening and stuff. But I think a bigger concept that I'm gonna be asking is like, imagine what your life would look like if your mind was your friend.
Yep.
Imagine what your life would look like if your mind is the thing that's actually generating you energy versus taking energy away from you. Like that's an insane
Working with
concept.
it.
Yeah, and just like not even being friends, but becoming best friend and the closest friend you got. Like that takes such a high level of actually being just able to separate your conscious and subconscious, to where actually you're letting the subconscious come up, and then you're allowing you consciously to dive in and to actually pick apart why a certain like people dwell on thoughts all the time, in which they either try to resist it and they try to not let that thought come up and they fight it, but if you resist it will continue to persist.
I agree. And there's, as far as mental health is concerned, there's like CBT is there's thought stopping, right? Where you're like, this thought comes up, stop. But really, what that is offering is the thought stopping is meant to stop what would be considered like an irrational thought. You know, like you can thought stop, but then you have to rewrite it. You're talking about neurons and neural pathways, like you have to rewrite the neural pathway that is keeping that repetitive thought in the cycle, right? So that's part of like rewiring it is thought stopping and then replacing. So, but I totally agree with you in alignment, like mind, body, alignment, connection. For me, it's a huge connection, and some sectors of mental health not considered. Um, I don't know how we could ignore it.
Yeah, yeah, like to me how I try to think of thoughts is to treat it like water flowing over a rock, where my mind is the rock and the thought's the water, where okay a thought pops up, I'm gonna say what's up to it. I might ask why are you here, and I might kind of dive into that probably through a meditation, and then I'm just gonna let that thought carry on, and I'm still grounded where I'm at. Where instead of dwelling on it, where that's I think a lot of people end up doing is they'll ponder something and then they'll just keep on popping up and they just get stuck into this vortex, you know.
Yep.
But yeah, at the end of the day, I think all the things that at least I'm gonna try and do will do. through Cairo um, and all this mental wellness stuff is to get people in a place where their mind can become their friend again. And if it is already their mind, then to elevate that and to be their best and closest friend. I think that's a great way towards building a healthier and well society as a whole.
Okay, people, you heard it here first from the chiropractor and from the mental health intern. Make your mind your friend, okay? Seriously, you'll thank your future self for it. Um, and just do what you can. Like we're all in this together, and the body of knowledge that is out there these days is so vast. So explore on your own, do what you can, but make your mind your friend. All right, Chris, until next time, man, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, it was. Love that. That was great. We're going to run it again.